channel. If you're new here, my name's Maria, and today's video is going to be a reading vlog, and because it's coming up to Halloween, and I think it'll be Halloween when I'm posting this one, I've tried to pick some reads that are going to be a bit more thematic and kind of fit in with that Halloween vibe. So the first one I'm picking up is one that has been on my TBR this month, and that's The Reappearance of Rachel Price, and that's by Holly Jackson. So I haven't read anything by Holly Jackson. I haven't read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder or anything like that, but I did want to pick this one up. It is a standalone, so it's a bit easier for me to get into, and I'm not starting another series because I am in the middle of quite a few series at the moment. But this one basically follows a girl whose mother disappeared, I think it's like around 20 years ago or something like that. She starts to make a documentary about it, and essentially on the set of the documentary her mother turns up. So her mother was Rachel Price, and that's all I really know about this one. I don't really know too much about it. I've heard some mixed things about it. Some people have said it was really good, other people have said it's a little bit predictable. I believe it is a YA thriller, so we'll see how that goes. I'm not a huge thriller reader, so it could be that it will surprise me because I'm not used to kind of the twists and turns that you would get in these stories. But yeah, I think it'll be a pretty easy read. Even though this does look a little bit long, it's not too long. I think it's around 350 to 400 pages. This is the Waterstones edition, so I got the edition with the sprayed edges, and it does have kind of a printed hardcover as well, so it's quite a nice edition, so hoping I'm going to enjoy it. And then the next one I've got is The Scarlet Veil, and this is by Shelby Mahoran, and this is set in the same world as the Serpent and Dove trilogy. So if you haven't read that trilogy, it's basically about a witch and a witch hunter. I won't go too much into the synopsis of that one, but it is really good. Great for this time of year as well, obviously. One that I do think is a little bit underrated, but it's a really fun read. So if you like anything with a witchy kind of theme, I definitely recommend that one. But this one's set in the same world, so I think it's almost like an interconnected series. I don't think you have to read that first trilogy to read this, but I'd imagine if you've read the trilogy, this one will probably be a bit more rich because it's set in the same world. So there may be a few Easter eggs in here from that first trilogy. But in this one we follow our main character, Cecile, who is basically a woman who's from high society. You know, she's quite proper, every parent's dream. She's always been really well behaved, and essentially she decides that she wants to kind of break out of that mold and becomes the first huntswoman within this world. So usually it's always men, but she wants to become the first huntswoman. So essentially their job is to hunt witches, demons, and all those type of things. And within this, the synopsis just kind of says that she's basically on a mission. She kind of ventures into the darkness within this world, and there may be someone there who's kind of intrigued by her, and I think the story kind of goes from there. That's all I really know about this one, but I do know it's a vampire story, so again, very on point for this time of year, and I think it'll be a perfect atmospheric read for around Halloween time. And then one that I am reading on my Kindle is An Academy for Liars. So I did actually get the ARC for this one. I'm a little bit late on reading it, but so far so good. I think I'm around 35 or 40% into this one, and essentially this one follows our main protagonist, Lennon, who at the start of the book is just really having a bad time of it with life. She's essentially at the point where she's deciding she may take her own life, so definitely check trigger warnings for this one. It is quite dark so far, but essentially she's at a point in her life where she really just is giving up. She has no hope. She's not really sure what to do. She gets a mysterious phone call that essentially invites her to Drayton College, which is basically a school of magic hidden in Savannah, and the story kind of goes from there. You kind of explore Lennon's journey there, kind of her realizing maybe why she's been invited there and how this world works. And yeah, so far I definitely say it's hitting all of the themes that you would expect from a dark academia. There's the magic there, the eeriness. It is quite creepy actually, some of it. I hadn't realized it was going to be so eerie, so sometimes when I'm reading it at night it is getting a little bit creepy for me, but I do think this author has written some horror novels, so you can definitely see that coming in here. So it's not too bad, it's not too crazily horrific or anything like that, but it's definitely got that eerie vibe down. But so far so good, really liking it. As I say, I'm only around 35% in, so I'll keep you updated on that one. So those are the three that I'm going to be reading this week. So An Academy for Liars, The Scarlet Veil, and The Reappearance of Rachel Price. So as I say, they're all quite different actually. This one's a little bit more of a romantasy, then I've got a thriller, and then a dark academia as well. They're all my favourite genres to kind of read around this time of year, so I'll be excited to jump into these two as well. Today's been a really gloomy, rainy day, so it's a perfect day just to sit down, read, get a hot drink, get cozy, and really dive into some of these. As I say, I'm already started with An Academy for Liars, but I may actually jump into The Scarlet Veil. I've been really anticipating this one for quite some time, and I feel like I need a good romantasy. I haven't read a good romantasy in quite some time, so definitely ready to read something that, even though there will be some dark themes in here, I'd imagine, is maybe a bit more light and fluffy on that romance side as well. So I think I may pick this one up this evening. And I didn't forget to show you actually that this one is also the Waterstones edition, so it has some nice sprayed edges. Then I can't remember if there is anything on the hardcover. Yeah, so it's just like a printed cover as well, so it's quite pretty too. I've had this one for over a year and definitely been anticipating it because I did really enjoy Serpent and Dove. So yeah, I'll be really excited to jump into this evening. So once I've read a bit more into some of these, I'll jump on and give you an update. lovely, just jumping on to give you a quick update on where I've got to with The Scarlet Veil. So I've actually been reading quite a bit of this over last night and this morning, and I've managed to get to 40%, and so far I'm really enjoying this one. I think I said in my last clip that I'd been told you didn't have to read Serpent and Dove to read this one. Personally, I think you should, because there's not a lot of world building done in this, and I think that's because obviously it's relying on a lot of the world building done in the previous series. So we are technically in a slightly different part of this world, but it may make you feel, if you're reading this without having read Serpent and Dove, that this lacks that world building and depth that you would expect from a fantasy world. So do with that information what you will. Just for me personally, I do think that reading the trilogy before this is definitely helping with some contextualization of things that are going on, some of the characters that are in here as well, who are playing pretty pivotal parts as well, even though they are in the background. Definitely having that understanding of where they've come from and kind of what their past is making this a lot more enjoyable for me, I would say. So yeah, disregard what I said before. I would definitely recommend reading that trilogy first, even though technically you don't need to. I think for me it's definitely making this experience a lot more rich than it would be had I not read that series, because a lot of things might not make sense if you didn't have that knowledge. I also think I mispronounced the main character's name in this, so it's not Cecile, it's Celie. So we're following Celie in this, and she's kind of a quieter character, kind of underestimated. She's always been seen as kind of the perfect epitome of a daughter and a woman within this land. She wanted to become one of the chasseurs, who are basically huntsmen. There haven't been any huntswomen before, but she wanted to try and become part of this group to fight against evil, whether it be witches, demons, vampires, or whatever that may be. She is getting a lot of flack for that at the start of this book. You know, a lot of people may be thinking that she shouldn't be there, that she's too delicate, she's too feminine, and there's a lot of pushback on that. Within this group of chasseurs, they're kind of quite religious as well, so a lot of their kind of morals and motivations come from religious undercurrents. So it's interesting how that's kind of woven in here and taken directly from history and how historically witches and things like that would have been viewed. But basically something happens at the very start of this book, and Celie is essentially whisked off to this different part of this land, and I think now that we're in this part of the story, it's definitely given me very mild Beauty and the Beast vibes. So she's basically within this house with this evil person who is kind of keeping her hostage as bait to reel in some of the other characters that are within this. I'm trying to be quite vague while also giving you a bit of an idea of what it's about, but trying not to give any spoilers here. But yeah, she's basically liaising with this evil person, and he happens to have a few people around there who are actually quite friendly, so giving off very much kind of Lumiere and Cogsworth vibes for me. So that's kind of where the Beauty and the Beast thing ends. It's not really a similar story as such, it's just that she's trapped within this castle and these are her kind of two allies, and while they're not kind of advocating for the evil character within this, they're definitely loyal to him, and I think that's kind of where it's given me those comparisons. So for me personally, I love Beauty and the Beast, so I'm loving that side of things. And this one as well, there's been an introduction of a different type of characters, so there's ghosts in here that are very integral to the story as well. So for me it's just giving those perfect Halloween vibes. So we've got vampires, witches, ghosts, all those good things that you want to be reading about around this time of year. And the main driver of the plot at the moment is kind of a mystery that Celie is trying to uncover. So she's trying to obviously find a way to escape and survive within this castle, but there is an undercurrent of a mystery of what's happened to certain characters and certain characters' relatives, how they happen to be there, how they've kept this land secret, and that's really pushing the plot forward. I know I kind of said at the start this is a bit of a fun romantasy, but so far there hasn't really been much romance in here. There's a few suggestive comments and things like that, but there hasn't been too much romance in here. There's definitely been no interactions in that way, and I'm around 40% in, and I do remember from Serpent and Dove it being a little bit more slow burn. There was definitely suggestive comments and rhetoric, but it was definitely slow burn when it came to the romance, which I really like. That's something I really enjoy when I'm reading a romantasy. It doesn't have to be, you know, from page 10 full of romance. For me, I just love that build up and the kind of the almost like a will they won't they kind of relationship. So yeah, at the moment I don't really know where the story's going to go. I have my suspicions about certain things, but so far it hasn't been too predictable or anything. I do think there's a few things that I probably will predict as the story goes on, but this is technically YA. I think it may be more NA, so new adult, but it is a YA book, so there may be a few things that I may predict along the way just because the stories do tend to be a little bit less complex. But so far it isn't reading too much like a YA. I do think it's, as I say, more for that new adult genre. So yeah, it's keeping me intrigued, keeping me interested, and I'm excited to see where it goes. But yeah, so far really good. I'll try and read a bit more of this today. I may switch over to An Academy for Liars, so I haven't read any any more of that since I started the vlog. Quite honestly, it is really creepy and eerie, and I don't really want to read it just before bed, so I may read some of that this evening when I'm reading after work and give you a bit of an update on that once I've read a bit more. But I just kept reading this one last night because it's a bit less creepy. There are kind of some eerie vibes in here, but An Academy for Large is definitely getting the creep factor in there. So yeah, no other updates other than that, just to let you know that I got around 40% into this one. Seemed to be flying through it, so hopefully going to finish it pretty quickly. But once I've read a bit more of this and a bit more of An Academy for Large, I'll jump on and give you another update. Just jumping on because I have an update for An Academy for Large. I have actually finished that today. So I think for this one, initially I was extremely intrigued. I was extremely engaged. I was really enjoying it. I think up until the around 40% mark, it was really engaging me. I was really intrigued in the story and just wanted to see where the story was going. After that, it did kind of slump a little bit for me. I would say between kind of the 40% and the 70% mark. Felt a little bit slow. I wasn't really that invested in it, and reading it was a little bit of a slog for me, I will be honest. I didn't think that the pacing was quite right, but by the end of it, it did kind of bring it back for me. So I'm quite conflicted on my feelings on this one and how I thought about it and kind of where I wanted to rate it. I've kind of sat on around a 3.75. It wasn't quite a 4-star, but I didn't want to rate it anything lower than kind of 3.75. The reason being, I do think that the concept and the plot felt really unique to me. I think Alexis Henderson really has a talent for building that atmosphere, and I found her writing style to be really captivating for the most part, and that's kind of what got me enthralled right from the very start. I really loved the conversations around persuasion and the morality of it and kind of how that impacts us in our lives, and also kind of the discussions that they had for justifying some of the persuasion that they were using on normal human beings, and kind of how they would rationalize that within their own minds and justify as well. So I thought that was really intriguing and really interesting as a concept within this narrative. I think the main point where this book let me down was the characters. So the main character I found to be a little bit inconsistent in terms of her characterization. I couldn't really understand her motivations, even though we're having the story from her point of view. I didn't really feel like I understood her motivations or understood her fully enough to connect with her. And the same was kind of true with all of the side characters and the main love interest. I felt that they were a little bit flat. So again, it just meant that the story in terms of their relationships and their friendships didn't really impact me as much as I think it should have. So in terms of the character work, it did actually let me down a little bit on that side, but I do think overall it was a really enjoyable book. It was an enjoyable read. It's definitely made me intrigued to read more from Alexis Henderson because, as I say, the writing style and the atmosphere and the vibes that she had in there were just perfect for autumn reading, probably perfect for kind of winter reading as well. It did kind of veer into that horror genre as well. Not too much. I mean, if you're like me and a bit of a wimp, you will get a little bit scared by it. But for the most part, if you read horror, you probably wouldn't consider this horror at all. But it was a little bit of a genre-bending book as well. But yeah, definitely plan to read some more of her work just because of the writing style and because of the vibes. But overall, I think this one was kind of a mid-range one for me, around 3.75. Great writing. Character work for me just didn't hit the way I hoped it would, but overall it was a good read. In terms of the Scarlet Veil, I have read a little bit more of this. I think I'm around 60% into this one now, or just over that, and still really enjoying it. Still a really fun read. I'll probably give you my full thoughts once I'm finished because not too much has changed since I updated you last time, but just a really compulsive read, a really binge-worthy read, really fun to read, as I say, and exactly what I was looking for in terms of a fun romantasy. So I'm going to try and finish this tonight, if not by kind of tomorrow morning. So once I've finished it, I'll jump on and give you a quick update on this one. one and kind of my overall feelings. I then will be trying to read The Reappearance of Rachel Price. Before I need to get this vlog up, I've given myself a little bit of a tight deadline because it's now Tuesday and this vlog is supposed to be going up on Thursday. So we'll see how much I get rid of The Reappearance of Rachel Price. It may just be kind of my initial feelings and how it's going within the vlog, but if I can squeeze it in and if I can get it finished, I'll give you my final thoughts on that one as well. But yeah, tonight's plan is just to try and finish this one, hopefully get it finished by tonight if not tomorrow, give you my final thoughts and see where we get to with Rachel Price. So a couple of updates for you. Firstly being that I have now finished The Scarlet Veil and I really enjoyed this one. It was a really bingeable read, really fun characters, really fun story. It's the same way I felt about Serpent and Dove, that trilogy. I just really enjoyed it. It's not a series that I kind of put up there as some of my top favourite series of all time. It's not one I think about all the time, but my experience while reading it is always really fun. I always enjoy the characters, the banter, and yeah, just a series that I would really recommend if you do like romantasy or young adult fantasy. These are definitely really good series to check out. Now this one, I know I am calling it a romantasy, but I will say that in this particular book there wasn't a huge amount of romance happening, so we got little crumbs in terms of their attraction and maybe how the characters were going to come to care for each other, but it definitely didn't carry the plot, if that makes sense. So there's a lot of plot in here, a lot of things going on in the background that could have really carried the book if the romance wasn't in there. So I am kind of saying this is a romantasy heavy book, but maybe it's a bit more leaning fantasy. But for me anyway, I do just think that it's a really fun read. I love all the characters, love the banter. This one did end on a cliffhanger unfortunately, and I have to wait until I think it's out in March, the next book in this series. I kind of forgot that this was the first book in a series and wasn't anticipating such a cliffhanger, so yeah, a bit annoyed at myself about that for not thinking about the next book not being out yet, but definitely really enjoyed this and I'll be really anticipating book 2 when it comes out in March. And then I have started The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson and I am gripped. I'm absolutely gripped within this one, really enjoying the story, really want to see where it goes. I think I mentioned the premise of this is basically that we've got a young girl whose mum disappeared. It was around 16 years ago at this point. They've never solved the mystery of her disappearance and essentially they were doing a documentary kind of going through everything that happened, almost like one of those true crime documentaries. And essentially they're going through the motions of that and then one day her mum actually turns up. And I'm kind of at that point now in terms of my reading. I'm around 25% in and we've just got to that point. So that's all in the synopsis. That's not a spoiler or anything. That's kind of the premise for this book. And it's been really interesting because I feel like we've been getting a behind the scenes of some of those true crime documentaries. I love watching those. I always enjoy those as well. But it's interesting to see kind of the other side of it and almost how those documentaries may impact the real people that are behind these stories. So I think that's been a really interesting takeaway that I hadn't really anticipated before going into this story. And also I'm not a huge thriller reader, so maybe take with a grain of salt everything I say because I may be getting more impressed with stuff that's happening in here than avid thriller readers will, because it's not a genre I pick up all the time. But I do think the suspense is getting built in here really well. I'm really intrigued in where the story's going to go. I'm already trying to plot out who I think is incriminated and I'm always trying to pick out who's the least likely person because that's usually who it's going to be. So I've got a few theories, I've got a few ideas of who I think may be incriminated and why they may be. I'm not going to say them because they may be a little bit spoilery, and if it ends up being true then again I just don't want to spoil it for anyone. But I've got a few theories of what I think might be going on in this one and where it's going to go. But so far just really enjoying the writing, really enjoying the characters, really enjoying the pacing of this one, and I'm just really excited to see where it goes. And it's the first book I've read by Holly Jackson, but it's definitely given me the incentive to finally pick up A Good Girl's Guide to Murder because I've had that on my shelf for such a long time. But this has definitely made me more motivated to pick that one up because I'm really enjoying this so far. But yeah, I'm going to try and get this read between today and tomorrow morning so that I can fit it all into this vlog and give you my final thoughts. So I think I have around 5 hours left on the audiobook, so if I really try I may be able to get that done and maybe able to complete it. But once I've read a bit more, once I have a few more thoughts on this one, I'll jump on and let you know. So just jumping on to give you my final thoughts on the reappearance of Rachel Price, as I did manage to finish this yesterday. I literally read it in one day. Basically could have read it in one sitting. It was so bingeable, really captivating, really loved the writing style, really loved all the characters, and I did guess some of the twists, although I didn't guess them fully. I did kind of guess who would be involved and who would be kind of the culpable people, but one did kind of get me out of left field. I hadn't picked up on some of the foreshadowing for one of the twists in here, but for the most part I would say that it was a tiny bit predictable, but the way that it was executed was done really well, so it was still really enjoyable to read and still a really good thriller for me. I do think that it was done really well. As I say, I don't read a lot of thrillers, so it may be more predictable to people who read thrillers all the time, because I think there was quite a bit of foreshadowing within this one that I picked up quite early on. So if you're an avid thriller reader, you may find this a little bit more predictable than I find it, but for me it was just really bingeable. I just really wanted to continue reading to see where the story went, to see if we would find out the answers, and yeah, all in all I'd say it was really good. I would say just because it was a little bit predictable, and if even someone like myself who doesn't read thrillers a lot can guess it from quite early on, it didn't quite hit that 5-star for me because of that. So it's around a 4.25, 4.5 for me at the moment, because the writing was brilliant, the characters were great, it was really bingeable, a really fun read. So yeah, 4.25 to 4.5 on this one. Really enjoyed it, loved the writing, and I can't wait to read A Good Girl's Guide to Murder now because I've read this one, because a lot of people do say that they prefer that series over this. So if I had such a great time with this one, I'm imagining I'm going to have a really good time with that one as well. And then just going through the clips, I don't think I gave a star rating for this one. I rated this one around 4 stars as well, because again, it's not one of those 5-star feeling books or 5-star feeling series for me, but in terms of the writing and in terms of the story and in terms of the characters that are in here, they're just really enjoyable, they're really fun to read. So for me, it's definitely worth all of those 4 stars, and maybe even a 4.5 for this one as well. So yeah, that's everything. I think all in all this week I've had a really good week of reading. I've definitely found some new authors that I'm intrigued to read more from, so Holly Jackson and Alexis Henderson. Definitely intrigued to read more from them and to see what else they have in their backlog, because yeah, really enjoyed their writing styles, really enjoyed the vibes that I got with those stories. And Shelby Mahoran, obviously that's an author I already loved, but I'll be really anticipating that second book when it comes out in March. Let me know if you've read any of these, or if there's any books that you think I would like based on my enjoyment of these. I'm always looking for new recommendations, especially for kind of autumn or fall vibe books, so definitely put all your recommendations in the comments below. If you like this video, do remember to give it a like, and if you want to see more from me, remember to subscribe. I'm posting 2 videos per week, and it's videos like this, so there'll be reading vlogs, come shopping with me, book hauls, monthly wrap-ups, all good bookish things like that. Other than that, thanks so much for watching this one. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one soon. Bye!